The alien girl moved quickly across the desert, her small feet kicking up dust with every step. Her skin was pale blue, and her eyes reflected the harsh sunlight. She carried a small container, empty, but meant to be filled with water. Every step was dangerous. The desert was not just dry, it was controlled by her tribe, a harsh group that punished thieves without mercy. She had no choice. Her little brother was sick, and he needed water to survive. Ahead, she saw the reservoir. It was hidden behind rocks and sand, a secret place known to very few. Pipes and strange machines surrounded it, glowing faintly in the sun. A low hum came from the machines, warning any who approached. She crouched behind a rock, watching the rhythm of the guards. Her heart pounded. One wrong move and her arm would be gone, or worse. The hum of the machines made her sweat, but she stepped forward anyway. She reached the first machine and carefully pushed it aside. Sparks flew. Her hands shook, but she pressed on. Every step was slower, calculated. The reservoir was almost within reach. Her brother's face appeared in her mind, pale and weak. That image gave her courage. She gripped the container and bent down to scoop water. Suddenly, a mechanical arm shot out from the ground. She screamed. It was sharp, moving faster than she could react. She twisted her body, but the arm grazed her shoulder, leaving a painful scratch. The metal was hot and left a burn mark. Pain shot through her arm, and she cried out. Her container tipped, spilling sand over the water. Panic surged inside her. She had almost failed. The machines whirred and moved toward her. From behind a dune, a shadow moved. At first, she thought it was another patrol guard, but the figure ran faster than any alien she had seen. He was human, wearing rugged clothes that blended with the sand. Without hesitation, he leapt in front of her, grabbing her arm just as the mechanical arm swung down again. Sparks flew, and the arm smashed into the ground, breaking in pieces. The human looked at her, eyes calm but alert. He did not speak, only held her tight and pulled her back to safety. She was trembling, her small body shaking from fear and relief. Who are you?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. The human said nothing at first. He crouched beside her, scanning the area. His eyes were sharp, noticing every movement of the machines and the shadows of patrol drones hovering in the distance. "You can't stay here," he finally said, his voice quiet but firm. She stared at him, not understanding. Why would a human risk his life to save her? Humans were rare in her desert, usually weak, fragile, and not to be trusted. Yet here he was, saving her. She glanced at her arm. The scratch burned and her container was still empty. The human noticed and handed her a small device. It hummed softly and projected a tiny shield around them. "Move," he said simply. He helped her to her feet. She followed, unsure but trusting him. Step by step, they moved behind dunes, shadows hiding them from drones. Her heart raced with every step. One drone hovered close, its red eyes scanning the ground. The human threw a small rock. It hit the metal and spun, drawing the drone away. She gasped, amazed at his cleverness. He moved silently, careful, precise. She realized he was not like any human she had seen in stories. He was strong, fast, and smart. Her fear slowly mixed with curiosity. Why was he here? Why was he helping her? They stopped behind a larger rock. She crouched, holding her arm close to her chest. The pain throbbed, but it was bearable. The human looked at her, calm and steady. "You need water, right?" he asked. She nodded, hesitant. He pulled out a small container from his bag and handed it to her. Water. Fresh, clean, and enough for her brother. She drank quickly, almost trembling with relief. The taste was sweet and pure. She had not had water like this in days. The sun was high, and the desert heat pressed down on them. She felt the weight of her decision. Her tribe would punish her if they found out she had tried to steal water, even if she survived. But without this water, her brother would die. She looked at the human again, and a thought crossed her mind. Maybe humans were not as weak as her tribe said. Maybe they were brave, clever, and willing to risk everything for others. The machines around the reservoir had stopped for now, but the danger was not gone. She needed to move to find a safe path back. The human seemed to understand her thoughts. He pointed toward a series of dunes that led away from the machines and patrols. "This way," he said. She nodded, gripping her container tightly. Every step forward was dangerous, but she had no choice. Her brother's life depended on her, and now, somehow, this human had become her only hope. As they moved, the desert seemed to watch them, silent and merciless. Each grain of sand was a threat, each shadow a potential enemy. Yet the alien girl felt a strange sense of hope. She had survived the first test, and with this human by her side, maybe, just maybe, she could reach her brother safely. The sun began to set, painting the desert orange and red. The wind carried dust in swirling patterns, hiding them as they moved. She glanced at the human. He said nothing, only kept walking. Step by step, they disappeared into the dunes, away from danger, toward an uncertain future. Every heartbeat was a reminder. One wrong move, and the desert could claim her arm, her life, or both. She tightened her grip on the container. She would survive. She had to. The cave was small and dark, but it offered shelter from the desert heat and the patrol drones outside. The human guided the alien girl inside, his hand firm on her shoulder, steadying her trembling body. She sank to the ground, her arm throbbing, while he examined the scratch carefully. It was deep enough to sting, but not serious. He pulled out a small cloth, damp with a strange liquid, and pressed it against her arm. The burn hissed and smoked slightly, but the pain eased. She watched him, her eyes wary. No one in her tribe had ever cared for her like this. "Why are you helping me?" she asked finally, her voice quiet, almost afraid to break the silence. The human didn't answer immediately. He looked at the cave's entrance, scanning for movement, then back at her. "Because you're alive, and that matters," he said finally, his voice calm but filled with a strange certainty. She blinked, confused. No one had ever said words like that to her. Outside, the wind howled across the dunes. The desert was still dangerous, and the hum of the patrol drones reminded her that time was running out. She shifted closer to the human, noticing the way he moved with care, alert to every sound. "We can't stay here long," he said. "They'll track your path if we wait too long." She nodded, realizing the truth of his words. Even in the shadowed cave, she felt the tension in the air. Every sound, every flicker of light might mean death. The human handed her a small cylindrical device. "This will help," he said. It glowed faintly, projecting a shimmering shield around them. She stared at it, mesmerized. Technology like this was rare in her world. Her tribe depended on brute strength and strict rules, not clever gadgets. This human seemed to have knowledge far beyond anything she had seen. She felt a mix of fear and awe. "Can you move?" he asked, crouching down beside her. She nodded, clutching her container tightly. Her legs were stiff from running, her heart still racing, but she felt a spark of determination. The human led her to a narrow passage that cut through the rocky cave walls. It twisted and turned, dark and quiet, a perfect place to hide from prying eyes. She followed silently, trusting him despite the fear gnawing in her chest. The passage opened to a rocky ridge overlooking the desert. Patrol drones moved like slow, glimmering stars in the distance. The human scanned the area, then whispered, "We move when they change direction. Be ready to run." Her pulse quickened. Every step outside the cave would be dangerous. The desert was unforgiving, and her tribe's laws were brutal. One mistake, one misstep, and she could lose more than just her arm. They crouched low, moving slowly across the ridge. She marveled at the human's calm precision. He pointed out shadows, calculated distances, and even predicted the drone's movements. She realized that survival was not just about speed or strength. It was about thinking ahead, watching, and acting smart. She had never encountered such strategy before. As they moved, she whispered, "My brother, he needs water." The human nodded. "I know. That's why we can't fail. We do this right, or there's no chance." His words were steady, without panic, and they gave her a strange courage. For the first time, she felt hope rising inside her chest. Suddenly, a drone shifted direction, its red light scanning the ridge. She froze. The human acted quickly, throwing a small stone that ricocheted off a rock. The drone turned, following the sound, and they slipped past unnoticed. Her heart raced, adrenaline pumping through her body. She had never moved so carefully, never relied on someone else so completely. The ridge led to a hidden path, narrow and winding, that the human said would take them closer to a place he called the safe village. She followed, her body tense but alert, every nerve alive. The desert around them was vast, empty, and merciless, but the human's presence made her feel like she could survive it. She realized that without him, she would never have reached this point. Night fell, and the sky became a deep indigo. Stars sparkled like scattered gems above the desert. The wind was cooler now, carrying the faint scent of distant rocks and sand. She shivered but held the container tightly, reminding herself of her brother waiting for her. The human glanced at her and said, "Almost there. Keep moving, no stopping." She nodded silently. Every step through the dark path was a test. Her muscles ached, her arm throbbed, but the thought of her brother kept her moving. The human led with confidence, never looking back, never hesitating. She realized he was not just a protector, he was a guide, someone who could see danger before it arrived. Finally, the path opened into a valley hidden between high dunes. She gasped. Small lights flickered ahead. Houses, or shelters, tucked into the shadows. People moved quietly, and she noticed the signs of life: children playing, adults working, and none of the harsh rules of her tribe visible here. She looked at the human. His eyes were calm, almost smiling. "We made it," he whispered. She felt a wave of relief, mingled with disbelief. The village was real, safe, and hidden from the eyes of her tribe. Her arm throbbed less, her body relaxed slightly, but she knew danger was not over. Patrols would search for her, and the desert would never truly forgive a thief. Yet in this moment, standing beside the human who had risked everything for her, she allowed herself a small breath of hope. Her brother might survive. And for the first time, she realized that trust, bravery, and cunning could be as powerful as any weapon. The human had shown her that, and she would never forget it. The alien girl watched the human move silently through the village streets, his eyes scanning every corner. She tried to keep up, her small feet barely making a sound on the uneven ground. Every shadow seemed to hold a threat, every flicker of light from distant lanterns a warning. She clutched her container tightly, now filled with water, and felt the weight of responsibility pressing on her. Her brother depended on her. If she failed now, there would be no second chance. They reached a narrow alley between two buildings. The walls were covered in faded symbols, old markings that told stories she could barely read. The human crouched, signaling her to do the same. From above, a drone hummed softly, its red eyes sweeping back and forth. She froze. Her heart pounded in her chest. The human pointed to a pile of crates stacked nearby. She followed his silent command, moving quickly but carefully. The drone passed, its eye scanning the wrong side of the alley. Relief flooded through her, but it was fleeting. Danger was everywhere, and the desert drones did not forgive mistakes. The human led her to the edge of the village where a small path wound up the rocky cliffs. The wind howled, carrying dust and sand in swirling clouds. She almost stumbled, but he caught her elbow, steadying her. "Careful," he whispered. She nodded, realizing how easily one misstep could end everything. Her body ached from the journey, but fear and determination pushed her forward. She had to survive. Suddenly, a figure appeared ahead, tall and thin, with eyes that glowed faintly in the dark. One of the desert patrols. The alien girl froze. She had never expected to meet them here. The human acted without hesitation. He reached into his bag and pulled out a small, round device. He pressed it, and a soft hum filled the air. A bright flash of light erupted behind the patrol, forcing him to cover his eyes. Taking the opportunity, the human grabbed her hand and pulled her into the shadows. She gasped but didn't resist. Every movement had to be perfect. Any noise could alert the patrol. They ran through the rocky path, the cliffs narrowing around them. Below, the desert stretched endlessly, dark and quiet, hiding dangers she could not see. The human moved with incredible speed, his steps confident and sure. She struggled to keep pace, but he slowed only slightly to match her stride. "Almost there," he whispered, and she felt a flicker of hope. The path opened onto a ledge overlooking a hidden canyon. The human paused, pointing toward a small glowing structure at the bottom. "There," he said softly. "That's where we can rest and plan the next move. Your brother is safe if we reach it." She nodded, her body trembling with exhaustion and relief. For the first time, she felt the possibility of success, though danger still hung over them like a dark cloud. As they descended, the alien girl noticed the strange plants growing along the cliffside, their leaves glowing faintly in the night. She had never seen anything like them. The human moved carefully, guiding her through the uneven ground. One slip, and they could fall into the canyon below. She felt a rush of fear, but the human's presence was steadying. He had become more than a protector. He was her anchor in this harsh, merciless desert. Halfway down, a loud screech echoed from above. Another patrol, perhaps alerted by their movements. She froze, but the human pressed a hand to her back, pushing her down behind a rock. They crouched in silence as the patrol passed, scanning the cliffs with glowing eyes. The human whispered instructions, pointing to the next safe spot. She followed without hesitation. Every command was precise, every movement critical. Survival depended on trust, and she trusted him completely now. At last, they reached the bottom of the canyon. The glowing structure was small, almost like a shelter built into the rock. Warm light spilled from the entrance, and faint voices carried through the air. The alien girl felt a sense of relief, but it was tempered with caution. The village above was no longer safe, and the desert would not forgive their intrusion. She clutched her water container and took a deep breath, ready to face whatever came next. Inside the shelter, she saw a group of aliens huddled together, speaking in hushed tones. Children slept on mats, and a few adults worked quietly, tending to small fires and preparing food. The human led her to a corner and nodded toward an empty mat. She sat down, her muscles aching, her arm still stinging from the earlier scrape. She looked at him, and he met her gaze steadily. No words were necessary. The danger was not over, but they had survived another test. Outside, the wind continued to sweep through the canyon, carrying whispers of the desert and distant patrols. She listened to the sounds, feeling the weight of the journey behind her and the uncertain path ahead. The human remained alert, scanning the surroundings even as he allowed her a moment of rest. She realized that this human had changed everything. He had turned a desperate flight into a possible survival, showing her a world beyond the harsh rules of her tribe. For the first time since the desert had claimed her, she allowed herself a small moment of hope. Her brother would live, the human would stay by her side, and maybe, just maybe, she could survive this world that had always been unforgiving. The night was still, the canyon quiet, but her mind raced with possibilities. They had escaped the first threats, but greater dangers waited, and she was ready to face them, because she no longer had to face them alone. The next morning, the canyon was quiet, but danger was never far. The alien girl woke to the faint hum of the shelter's energy source and the soft whispers of the humans and aliens moving about. Her arm throbbed slightly, a reminder of how close she had come to losing it. She touched it gently, wincing, but the human had cleaned and wrapped it well. He was already outside, scanning the ridge above the canyon, alert to every movement. She followed him silently, her curiosity mixed with caution. The canyon was narrow and steep, with jagged rocks forming natural barriers. She noticed the strange plants glowing faintly along the cliffs, their light creating shadows that seemed to move. It was beautiful, but eerie. "Stay close," the human whispered. She obeyed without hesitation, trusting him completely now. Every lesson from the desert, every mistake avoided had brought her to this fragile bond. They moved carefully to the edge of the canyon, peering down at the desert beyond. The patrol drones had passed, but the human didn't relax. "They'll come back," he said. "They always do." Her stomach tightened at his words. Her tribe's punishments were swift and cruel. If they were found, it could mean death. She gripped her container tighter, reminding herself that her brother's life depended on them staying safe. The human pointed toward a narrow trail that wound along the cliffs. "This will lead us to water sources and hidden villages," he said. She studied the path, steep and dangerous, but necessary. Every step down was a test of balance, every loose rock a potential trap. She carefully placed her feet, following his lead, her pulse racing. Halfway down, the human stopped suddenly, raising a hand. Ahead, a patrol drone moved along the trail, its red light sweeping the cliffs. The alien girl froze. He motioned for her to crouch behind a jagged rock. They waited, barely breathing, as the drone passed. Sparks of dust floated in the air, and her heart pounded so loudly she thought it would give them away. Once it passed, the human led her down quickly but carefully, never letting her out of his sight. They reached a small plateau with a hidden pool of water, fed by a narrow stream from the mountains. She gasped, relief washing over her. Her brother would survive. She knelt to fill her container, letting the cool water wash over her hands. The human watched her, alert to every sound, every movement. She realized that his presence gave her more than safety. It gave her hope, courage, and the strength to act without fear. Suddenly, a sound echoed from the cliffs above, a soft scraping, almost like claws against stone. Her body stiffened. She turned to the human, and his eyes narrowed. "They're watching," he said quietly. He scanned the cliffs and pointed to a shadow moving between rocks. It was one of her tribe's hunters sent to track her. Her stomach sank. There was no time to run back. The human gestured for her to follow him up a narrow crevice in the rock wall. She obeyed, climbing carefully, the rocks scraping her hands. At the top, they emerged onto a hidden ledge overlooking another valley. The human pointed to a small village tucked into the rocks, partially hidden by the cliffs. Smoke rose from tiny chimneys, and movement suggested life. "There," he whispered, "safe for now." She exhaled, relief flooding her. For the first time, she felt she could breathe without fear. Yet even from here, she could see patrol drones scanning the desert. The danger was not gone, only delayed. They descended carefully into the village. She noticed the aliens here were different from her tribe. Calm, quiet, and wary, but not cruel. Children played without fear, and adults moved with purpose, not oppression. The human led her to a small hut at the village's edge. Inside, a family welcomed them with cautious smiles, offering food and water. Her body relaxed for the first time in days. As she ate, she thought of her brother. The water she had carried would reach him, and he would survive. Her small victories gave her confidence, but she knew the desert would not forgive easily. Patrols would search, and her tribe would punish anyone who aided her. She looked at the human, gratitude and awe filling her chest. He had risked everything to save her, teaching her courage, strategy, and trust in ways her tribe never had. That night she lay on a mat beside the small fire in the hut, listening to the hum of the desert wind. She reflected on the journey so far, the danger, the fear, the narrow escapes, and realized how much she had changed. The human had shown her a different world, one where life could be preserved, where courage could triumph over cruelty. Her arms still ached, and the threat of her tribe lingered, but for the first time she believed survival was possible. Outside, the wind carried whispers of the desert, distant and haunting. She closed her eyes, feeling the human's presence nearby, alert even in rest. The night was dark, but she felt a spark of hope igniting inside her. The journey was far from over, and dangers still lurked, but she had learned the first rule of survival. Trust could save a life, even in the harshest desert. She drifted into a restless sleep, dreams filled with distant deserts, shadowy patrols, and the promise of water for her brother. The human remained awake, scanning the horizon, ensuring that no threat would reach them in the night. The bond between them had grown, unspoken yet strong, and she understood now that their fates were linked. Together, they would face the desert, its dangers, and her tribe. Together, they might just survive. The first light of dawn spilled over the canyon, painting the rocks in shades of gold and orange. The alien girl stirred, her body sore, but her spirit sharper than ever. She looked at the human, who was already checking the surroundings, his eyes scanning the cliffs and ridges with steady focus. Every step they had taken had taught her to notice the smallest detail: the twitch of a shadow, the hum of distant drones, the whisper of wind carrying danger. She followed him silently as he led the way down a narrow path that twisted between jagged rocks. The trail was steep, and loose stones shifted under their weight. She nearly slipped once, but the human's hand shot out, steadying her before she fell. "Careful," he whispered, his voice calm but urgent. She nodded, heart pounding, feeling both fear and trust. The desert was alive with threats, but his presence made her feel capable. As they moved, the sound of distant voices reached her ears. Humans and aliens speaking softly, coordinating in hushed tones. The human held up a hand, signaling her to crouch behind a rock. They watched as a small patrol passed, unaware of their presence. She exhaled slowly, relief mixing with tension. Every encounter like this reminded her that survival was a delicate balance between action and patience. The path led them to a small ravine where the humans stopped. "We need to cross," he said. Below, a thin stream of water cut through the rocks, glinting in the sunlight. It was shallow but fast-moving. The alien girl hesitated. Her arms were weak, her legs sore, and the thought of falling terrified her. The human stepped forward first, testing the stones, then held out his hand. "Trust me," he said simply. She grasped it tightly, her knuckles white, and followed him carefully across the slippery rocks. Each step was a risk, but together they made it safely to the other side. Once across, they paused in the shadow of a large boulder. She looked around, noticing the strange plants growing along the ravine walls. Some glowed faintly, illuminating the narrow passage. She had never seen anything like it. The human moved with purpose, pointing out safe footholds and warning her of unstable rocks. His knowledge of the desert and its hidden dangers was remarkable, and she realized how little she had understood before. Survival wasn't just about strength, it was about skill, observation, and timing. Suddenly, a screech echoed through the ravine. She froze, heart hammering. From the rocks above, a patrol drone appeared, its red sensor light scanning the area. The human's hand shot out, pressing her to the ground behind a boulder. He whispered instructions, guiding her movements silently. The drone moved closer, and she held her breath, feeling the thrum of its engines through the rock beneath her. Then, with a flash of light and a soft hum, the human activated a small device that sent the drone spinning away in a confused panic. Relief surged through her, but she didn't dare move until he signaled it was safe. They continued through the ravine, emerging into a small clearing where the desert stretched wide and open. The sun was high and the heat pressed down on them. Her throat was dry, and she realized she had not yet drunk any of the precious water she carried. The human noticed and handed her a small cup. She drank slowly, savoring every drop, feeling the life return to her body. He drank from his own container, eyes scanning the horizon, alert to every movement. As they rested, she finally spoke. "Why are you helping me?" she asked quietly, her voice tinged with exhaustion and curiosity. The human looked at her, expression calm. "Because no one deserves to die for trying to survive," he said simply. She felt a strange warmth in her chest. No one had ever said anything like that to her. Her tribe had rules, punishments, and cruelty, but this human, he was different. After a short rest, they moved again, descending into another hidden path that led deeper into the desert. The human's guidance was meticulous, showing her where to step, when to pause, and how to remain unseen. She realized how much she had learned from him already, skills she never would have gained on her own. Every sense was heightened, the hum of the desert wind, the shift of sand beneath their feet, the faint glow of hidden life. By midday, they reached a small outpost tucked behind a rocky ridge. It was a safe place, hidden from patrol drones and her tribe's scouts. She could see other aliens moving quietly, tending to small fires and preparing simple meals. Children played without fear, and for the first time, she felt a flicker of peace. The human guided her inside, nodding to the others, and she noticed the cautious yet welcoming glances they received. Inside the outpost, she set down the water container, exhausted but alive. Her arm throbbed slightly, a reminder of the close call earlier. She looked at the human, gratitude and awe filling her eyes. He had brought her through the desert, past drones, patrols, and deadly terrain, and had done it without hesitation. She realized that trust, courage, and quick thinking were as valuable as strength. As she rested, she thought of her brother. The water would reach him, and he would survive because of her effort and the human's help. The journey was far from over, but she had learned that survival was possible when someone believed in you, and when you learned to trust even in the harshest deserts. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the outpost, and she felt a spark of hope grow in her chest. The path ahead would be dangerous, but together, she and the human might just conquer it. Night fell over the desert, and the outpost became a maze of shadows and quiet whispers. The alien girl lay awake on the hard mat, listening to the hum of distant drones and the occasional call of nocturnal creatures. Her arm throbbed slightly, but her mind was restless. Every sound felt amplified, every shadow suspicious. She knew the desert would not forgive carelessness. The human sat nearby, scanning the horizon even in the darkness, his posture tense but steady. After a long moment, he gestured for her to follow. She rose quietly, her feet brushing against the rough floor. Outside, the desert was alive under the pale light of twin moons. The sands shimmered faintly, and the wind whispered through the jagged rocks. He led her along a hidden path that wound around the cliffs, careful to avoid the patrols that still roamed the desert. Her heart pounded with every step, but she felt a strange calm in his presence. They reached a small ridge overlooking the valley below. From this vantage point, she could see the faint glow of several patrol drones sweeping across the desert, searching for intruders. The human crouched behind a rock, pointing toward a narrow trail that led down into a hidden canyon. "That's our way," he whispered. "Quiet and hidden, but dangerous." She nodded, tightening her grip on her water container. Every movement now could mean life or death. The descent was steep, and loose rocks shifted under their weight. She stumbled once, nearly losing her balance, but the human's hand shot out, steadying her before she fell. "Careful," he whispered again. She nodded, breathing deeply to calm the rush of adrenaline. They moved slowly, every step deliberate. Her body ached, but fear sharpened her senses, and she followed his lead without hesitation. Halfway down, a soft scuttling sound echoed from the rocks above. She froze, and the human pressed her gently against the cliff wall. From the shadows, a desert predator emerged, thin, quick, and with eyes that glowed in the moonlight. The human's movements were swift. He grabbed a small flare from his belt, tossing it toward the creature. The light startled it, and it leapt back into the shadows. She exhaled slowly, her pulse racing, realizing how close they had come to danger. They continued down the canyon, reaching a narrow stream where water trickled over smooth rocks. She knelt to drink, letting the cool water wash over her hands and face. Relief mixed with exhaustion as she realized how much she had endured. The human watched carefully, scanning the cliffs above and around them. He had saved her life more than once, and she understood now that every lesson, every warning, and every action had been to prepare her to survive. Suddenly, a faint sound of footsteps approached from upstream. The human held up a hand, signaling her to stay quiet. Through the shadows, she could make out two figures moving cautiously along the water's edge. They wore tribal markings, but not from her own tribe. The human motioned for her to move behind a boulder. They crouched together, barely breathing, as the strangers passed. Her heart pounded in her chest, but he gave her a small nod once the threat had gone. "You're learning," he whispered. She nodded, realizing how much she had grown since the journey began. The canyon widened, revealing a hidden grove filled with bioluminescent plants. Their glow reflected in the water, casting eerie patterns on the canyon walls. She had never seen anything like it. The human guided her to a small clearing where they could rest safely for the night. He pointed to a sheltered spot beneath a large rock formation. "We'll stay here until dawn," he said softly. She settled down, feeling the warmth of the shelter and the faint hum of energy from the glowing plants. As she lay there, she reflected on the journey so far. The near loss of her arm, the chase through the desert, the patrols, the predators, and the constant tension. Yet, through it all, the human had never wavered. His presence gave her courage and a sense of safety she had never known. She realized that survival was not just about skill or luck. It was about trust, timing, and learning from those who could guide you. Sleep came slowly, her mind replaying the dangers they had faced. The human remained vigilant, eyes scanning the shadows, ready for any threat. She felt a strange bond forming between them, silent but unbroken. She understood now that the desert would always test her, but with him by her side, she might just endure, adapt, and survive. The night was long, filled with uncertainty, but for the first time, she felt prepared to face whatever the desert would throw at them next. The first rays of sunlight stretched over the canyon, casting long shadows across the jagged rocks. The alien girl rose slowly, muscles stiff from the long night, but her eyes shone with determination. The human was already moving, checking the surroundings with precise, calm motions. Today, she realized, would be their most dangerous challenge yet. Every patrol drone in the area had likely been alerted to their presence, and her tribe's hunters were closing in. They descended into a narrow ravine that led toward the desert plain. The trail was treacherous, loose stones shifting beneath their feet, but the human guided her with quiet instructions, pointing out stable footholds and warning her of hidden pitfalls. She followed closely, feeling a mix of fear and confidence. She had grown stronger, faster, and smarter since they began this journey, but danger remained constant, a shadow that refused to leave. A sudden glint of metal caught her eye. A patrol drone hovered nearby, its red sensor scanning the cliffs. The human froze, pressing her down behind a jagged boulder. The drone's light swept over them, sending a chill down her spine. They held their breath, every second stretching endlessly. Then, with a subtle movement, The human produced a small device that emitted a sharp pulse of light and sound. The drone faltered, its sensors confused, and it veered off into the distance. She exhaled slowly, heart racing, amazed at his skill and quick thinking. They pressed onward, reaching a hidden oasis tucked into the rocks. Water glistened in the small pool, and strange, glowing plants surrounded the area. She knelt to drink, letting the cool liquid soothe her dry throat and tired body. The humans stood watch, alert and vigilant, his presence a steadying force. Here, for the first time in days, she allowed herself a brief moment of calm, savoring the peace before the next trial. Suddenly, movement in the rocks above caught her attention. 2 hunters from her tribe had tracked her to the oasis. Her heart skipped a beat. She had no weapons, no plan, only the human by her side. He turned, meeting her gaze, and gave a single nod. It was time to fight, or at least survive. The hunters leapt down the rocks with incredible speed, claws and weapons at the ready. The human stepped in front of her, shielding her with his body, and drew a compact energy weapon. The first hunter lunged, but the human was faster. He fired a precise shot, forcing the hunter back. The alien girl watched, adrenaline surging as he moved with fluid skill, defending them both. Her fear was replaced by determination. She reached for a glowing vine nearby, using it to trip the second hunter, buying precious seconds. The human glanced at her, eyes sharp, and gave a quick command. Together, they pushed the attackers back toward the edge of the cliff. A sudden roar echoed through the canyon, startling everyone. From the shadows, a massive desert creature charged, drawn by the commotion. The hunters froze, and in that moment, the human seized the opportunity. He guided the alien girl toward the edge, and together they leapt across the narrow gap to a safer ledge. The hunters and the creature collided, giving them a chance to escape. She landed hard, but managed to keep her balance, clutching the water container tightly. They ran along a hidden path, the desert stretching endlessly before them. The human led her through a series of narrow crevices and hidden tunnels, each step calculated and precise. She realized that every lesson, every narrow escape had prepared her for this moment. Her trust in him had grown into something deeper, respect, reliance, and a bond forged in danger. Finally, they emerged onto a plateau overlooking a hidden settlement in the distance. Smoke rose from small chimneys, and figures moved quietly among the buildings. Safe at last, the alien girl let herself breathe, relief and gratitude flooding her chest. The human placed a hand on her shoulder, steady and reassuring. She knew that the journey was not over, that challenges would continue, but for the first time she felt truly alive and capable. As the sun climbed higher, casting warmth over the canyon, she looked at him and nodded. Together they had faced the desert, its hunters and its dangers, and survived. Her arm throbbed slightly, a reminder of the perils she had escaped, but it no longer filled her with fear. She understood now that courage, trust, and the guidance of someone who cared could overcome even the harshest trials. They descended toward the settlement, ready to find help, share water with her brother, and plan the next steps of their journey. The desert stretched endlessly around them, but the alien girl knew one thing clearly: she would not face it alone again. With the human by her side, survival was not just possible, it was inevitable. Every danger, every shadow, every challenge had brought them here, stronger and united, ready for whatever lay ahead.